Manchester United won, Arsenal won. I think if you offered most United fans that result before the match, we would have been pretty happy. Although, as it turns out, we're a little bit disappointed. United actually should have gone on to win this game. We created the higher expected goals, and that doesn't even include a moment like this, where we couldn't even get the shot off. Ruben Amorim clearly had a game plan, and United executed it pretty darn well, I would say. What was that game plan? Well, that's what we're discussing in today's video. Before we do that, could you please subscribe? Go on, do it. And then we'll get into the video. So what was Ruben Amorim's game plan for this match? Well, it was to not have the ball. We can see that in the possession. Arsenal had far much more of the ball than what United did. However, I'm keen to point this out. That doesn't mean United necessarily parked the bus for 90 minutes. A lot of the time when we talk about a team having less of the ball, we're talking about no attempts to press and things like that. And this was something that I was very keen to point out in the Discord immediately after the match. United were trying to engage higher, particularly on resets and goal kicks. And also, by the way, join a Discord server, linked in the description, because why not? It's a good place to be. So join a Discord server. But the important thing here is, particularly in these reset moments, that's goal kicks, perhaps throw-ins in deep areas, whatever. United were trying to press in these moments. You can see it here, pressing nice and high up the pitch, trying to put Arsenal under pressure. Arsenal, to be fair, on this occasion, actually do a good job. They moved the ball across the pitch, but United continue in this man-to-man fashion. This was something that we were pointing out after the Sociedad game the other day, and it continued into this match. This is the 83rd minute, and United is still trying to press. Casemiro wins the ball high on the edge of the penalty area here, and it eventually falls for Rasmus Højlund, who doesn't get the shot off. But the important thing actually here is tactically how United are pressing. Because of course United start in a 3-4-3 formation, but actually in this game, it was more of a 3-4-1-2 with how he pressed off the ball. So the striker would actually drop into the midfield and play on the Arsenal pivot, Thomas Partey, and then the two inside forwards would actually press a little bit higher onto the centre-backs. Now, in terms of how the rest of the team operates, they almost play in sort of half and half positions. So they are, someone like Dalot, for example, he is high enough that he can put Timber under pressure, but he's not so high that he can't help out defensively. So let's say David Raya's got the ball in goal. Dalot doesn't need to be all the way onto Timber to stop Timber being an option. Dalot can actually play a few yards away because, of course, you've always got the time that it actually takes for the ball to travel. So should Raya play this ball, that gives Dalot the time to get over there. So that's what I'm talking about when I say these kind of in-between positions. And the midfielders could do something similar. They are close enough to the Arsenal midfielders that should they get the ball into feet, United can press. But also they're deep enough that should the ball go long, United can actually compete for the second ball. And what I liked about this, in terms of the intent with the press on these resets, on goal kicks, and unfortunately pretty much exclusively goal kicks in this game, United were keen to press, even in stoppage time. This is the 92nd minute, and Amorim is shouting, stay, as in, stay high in the position, press Arsenal. And in this moment, we should score the goal. You can see the shape here, the striker a little bit deeper than the other two, and Arsenal are eventually forced to play the ball long because United are near enough man-to-man. And as the ball goes long from Arsenal, because we have these in-between players who are doing two jobs, the second ball eventually, after the De Ligt header, the second ball eventually drops for us, and from this position we can play forward, and it actually led to this chance. So again, United should have scored from the high-pressing moment. Now, whilst United may have pressed well in these reset moments, the goal kicks and things like that, in open play, it was a completely different story. United were not good at getting pressure on the ball at all, and very often it was the passive back five shape, a passive back five shape that we've spoken about quite a lot on this channel in the past few months. But suddenly the play wasn't in the Arsenal half, it was in these deeper positions over here for United, and it's all about Arsenal really controlling the ball, dominating the game and dictating the game. The question is, why were they so comfortable in their controlling of possession? Why was it so easy for Arsenal? Well, realistically, a moment like this sort of points it out, because what we can see is that quite often United have got three centre-backs playing against one striker. Now, that of course means that striker is going to be kept fairly quiet, particularly when it's Marino, who's not even a striker. So United have got three centre-backs there, you're able to keep him pretty quiet, he doesn't offer too much. The problem is though, if you're 3 versus 1 here, it means in these positions here, Arsenal are inevitably going to have more players. And as a result, Arsenal took total control of this football match. They had all the time in the world, because in these deeper positions here, they always had to spare man, so there was always someone that they could find. So even if in moments United did go after the ball a little bit, Arsenal had the quality to sort of work it around, find a free player. And this is what was really forcing United to collapse into that deeper position. We actually saw something similar in the Champions League the other night between PSG and Liverpool.
a game I actually covered on the second channel. So if you want to go check the second channel out, again, link in the description. We cover loads of different teams there, so go have a look. But the point was, in that game, Liverpool were incredibly passive and PSG could control and dominate. It was very, very similar in this match. And in terms of how Arsenal were then trying to break United down, I think it was the movement off of these passive centre-backs. So someone like Declan Rice, for example, might go a little bit higher and almost attach himself to De Ligt a little bit. But what Arsenal are trying to do to play through the block is move laterally across the pitch in front of the United backline. Because United play with this kind of flat four, it means there isn't naturally a player that playing in that zone there, particularly because United played in a block that had no bite to it. You know, often when you play in a low block, you can still actually be quite aggressive. So when the ball goes into these areas, you can use that as sort of your snapping point, that position where you go into the challenge, you win the ball back for your team. But United were actually largely quite passive in these moments. So someone like Declan Rice, when Partey's got the ball here, Rice can make the movement laterally across in front of the defence. And for someone like De Ligt, when Rice is moving across to a right central midfield position, De Ligt can't follow him all the way. He can't go all the way across the pitch. So it does mean that, again, Rice sort of becomes the free man in this moment. And this is why Arsenal had so much control on the ball, not just in deeper positions, but also a little bit higher up. If we take this back a few seconds here, you can see what I'm talking about. United passive in the back five, but they're not actually picking up too many players. And it opens up this space in front of the defence. Because United are passive, we're not only blocking here, we're screening in front of the defence. This is a screen rather than anything aggressive, anything looking to actually engage the ball. But it does mean that someone like Rice in this moment has that space that he can arrive into. And as he arrives into that space, it is really difficult for De Ligt to follow him. Because De Ligt doesn't want to have to be moving that far. I think De Ligt actually had another really, really good game, by the way. But it's difficult to do this job. It's difficult to follow across in front of your defence like that. And it did allow Arsenal to get into these sort of positions where they're picking the ball up in dangerous areas. However, from an Arsenal point of view, they didn't have enough. They didn't do enough, particularly in central positions, to actually cause too many problems for United. Ultimately, United were able to kind of sit deep in what is pretty much a 5-4-1 shape. And Arsenal lack game-breaking quality. We spoke about this in the stream before the match. Arsenal lack that player to really unlock a defence with a fine pass. I mean, Odegaard in the first half was quite influential. He was getting into nice positions and trying different things, but they lacked just that brutal creativity in the final third, which meant that largely United were alright in the middle of the pitch. And what we essentially did was we went, Arsenal, you can play a little bit wider. We'll let you have time out here, you know, out wide. There's going to be a lot of space for Arsenal. But Arsenal didn't really want to put the ball at risk, so no one ever really took a United player on. They never really threatened a United back line. They didn't really look to attack the box with crosses. They didn't have runners in behind the defence. So actually, ultimately, it was fairly comfortable defensively for United, despite having so little of the ball. The other thing that was good about this Manchester United performance was we didn't have much of the ball at all, but we did still offer and carry an attacking threat in transition. And those that were with me in the stream before the match would have known that I was a little bit worried about that. I actually predicted that when United won the ball back, we wouldn't have the pace to be direct and transition. So I was wrong about that, because United actually done a pretty good job. Largely, we were passive off the ball, but there were moments where we'd apply just a little bit of bite. I think Casemiro done a particularly good job of that, but even some of the defenders as well. In the moments where United were more aggressive in the block, we looked a lot better. So again, I would encourage us to try and do that more moving forward. But when we can win the ball in the block, there's then room to transition into. And the reason for that, the reason there's so much room is because Arsenal were trying to push men forward. You know, the United block was solid, so Arsenal were trying to commit extra players forward. They were rotating in the final third to try and create a chance. But that means when we can win the ball back and now get into a transitional moment, there are going to be spaces or players not in the ideal position to try and recover. And it did give Manchester United chances to move forward. I guess the only problem from a United point of view here is, as we look to break, we look to attack. In terms of pace, in terms of power, it's a little bit lacking in that front line, and we were a little bit reliant on Bruno Fernandes's passing ability and Garnacho's ability to pick the ball up and attack defenders, because outside of that, we weren't particularly direct. It changed a little bit when Højlund came onto the pitch. It gives us that extra running threat, but for large parts of the game, we carried a transitioning threat, but I don't know if I was ever too confident that we were going to score from them. So you can see Lenny Yoro here. Finally,
being aggressive in the block, stepping out of the defence, putting the tackle in, and then the quality's good. We've got players in great areas here. We're in a good position. But if you look at Eriksen down the bottom there, is he really going to offer the pace to really hurt the Arsenal defence? Probably not. Xerxes in the middle? Perhaps not. Someone who did, though, was of course Bruno Fernandes with his passing, and Garnacho. I think Garnacho had a really good game. Really, really good game. Of course, the final product needs work, particularly his shooting or perhaps his decisions when shooting. But actually, in terms of his threat, I felt that he did a really good job of gaining valuable ground for United in this game, getting United up the pitch. And I think particularly in the middle third, he was actually making some pretty good decisions to get us into these positions. So I think Garnacho played well. And again, he was really the big transitioning threat here. Casemiro wins the ball in the middle of the park. It's Garnacho that falls to. He makes a good decision. He plays it to Bruno Fernandes. Bruno returns to favour, gives it back to Garnacho. And then Garnacho makes the good decision. Mazraoui going round on the overlap. Another player who had a good game. And again, United get themselves into the final third. So, again, did I ever feel that United were actually going to score from one of these transitions? Perhaps not. Although I wouldn't say that is a criticism of Ruben Amorim as such. That is more of the squad we've got at the moment. We are, of course, extremely limited. So when we try and break fast, we don't actually have that many quick players to hit on the break, but still United carried a threat. So I would say all in all, it was an effective game plan from Ruben Amorim. It got us the point and actually should have got us 3 points with the chances that were created. It does feel more like an away performance rather than a performance at Old Trafford, where in the long term we want to be the team that take control and dominate. But for where we're at now, if you offered United fans before the game a draw, and actually a draw that we were going to end up disappointed with, I think United fans would say we had a pretty good day, and I would tend to agree. I think there were some really good individual performances, and I think again we have seen that this system can be particularly effective in the bigger games where we actually have less of the ball and are asked to do more defensive work. I think we look quite effective in those games, but of course in the long term we have to try and find a way to change that, to be more aggressive and to take the game to other teams. But for where we are at now, a decent day for United, a decent point. I think there were several positives from the game that we will look at during the course of the week. But for today, we're finished there. So thank you guys very much for watching. Hope you have enjoyed the video. And as always, I'll see you in the next one.